We talk a lot on this channel about all the really amazing things you can do in the PPC ad channels, whether that's using the specific tools, optimizing your campaigns, what have you. But every once in a while, we're going to talk about third-party software that we really think can help you up your game to the next level. And today we have one of those videos. We're going to talk about Supermetrics. It's a platform that I use and benefit from literally every day. In a nutshell, what Supermetrics does is it gets your data. It takes all of the marketing data you need and brings it into your favorite reporting, analytics, or storage platform so you can use it in either a spreadsheet, data visualization tool, or leave it in a data warehouse for later. So what we're going to run through today are some really specific examples of how we use Supermetrics, but also give you a rundown of some of the other ways that you can use the tool and give you some information about pricing and how it can fit your needs. So like we said, Supermetrics is here to help you get your data into a more user-friendly platform, some place that you can manipulate the data, do more with it, have better reporting, all of that good stuff. Think about all the different metrics you can use from the different ad platforms that you know and love, use on a daily basis. And effectively what we're going to do is import data through Supermetrics. We're going to use the connectors to those platforms and be able to take our data and put them into a number of different platforms. And Supermetrics has different solutions for different tools that you would want to use to then leverage that data later on. Today, what we're going to talk about are mostly these platforms on the left. So Google Sheets, Data Studio, Excel, and Uploader. And most specifically, we're going to go through a full example of how to use it in Google Sheets. The good news is that the Google Sheets use is very similar to Excel. And then we'll have a little bit toward the end talking about how to use it for Data Studio, and then a short intro into Uploader. All the other pieces on the right are a little less specific to PPC, so we're not going to focus on those today. Once we hop into a Google Sheet, once you are signed into Supermetrics and you have your account set up, it's very easy to access. You'll just hop into add-ons, and then Supermetrics will pop up down here below. And what we want to do is click Launch Sidebar to get started. So you can see that it opened up this toolbar on the right, and this is where we're going to spend most of the time in this demo, is going through how to use the different settings in here to get the data that you want into this Google Sheet. And the first thing I want to do is clarify a specific term that I'm going to be using quite a bit, and that's this one up here at the top, and that's query. Basically, anytime I say query, what I mean is that is the instance where Supermetrics goes and pulls the data that you told it to get out of the ad platforms and puts it into this Google Sheet. So anytime I refer to a query, that's what I mean. It's just the instance of Supermetrics pulling the data in that you told it to pull. So let's start off by going through each of the different settings that we've got in here. The first thing you're going to do is choose your data source. And there are lots of different data sources when you open this up. Here's a better view of all of those at once. You can see there are a ton of different account types that we can use for Supermetrics. Everything from ad roll to Facebook, Google Ads, Outbrain, LinkedIn, Instagram, Quora, YouTube. All of these things are in here. Some of them are designated as enterprise, meaning you have to have a certain level of Supermetrics to utilize those platforms. Some say early access because apparently I'm very special and I get early access to things. But any of the ones that you see with a dark bar next to them, that means that I have an account linked to them and it's showing some sort of account ID, so I blurred those out. But I did want to show what it looks like when you have an account already signed in through Supermetrics, because it does make things a little bit more friendly, that it keeps you logged into all of these ad accounts for as long as it possibly can. LinkedIn is one of those that'll make you re-sign in every 60 days. But the nice part is Supermetrics will keep you logged into these platforms. So if you want to pull data from Google Analytics and then in the same working session go in and pull something from Facebook ads, you don't need to log in and out of different platforms. It just keeps you signed in there. And you'll know when your account is linked because you'll have a couple of these here that have a very generic name next to them. It'll show you that you are using that account to log in. There are some times where you might have multiple different login points. Maybe you have another team member who's logged in, or you had to use a different client login. So it will show you the name next to the user account that you're logged in next to. So for LinkedIn, you can see that I have my name there, but there's a little caret pointing down. And if I needed to log in through a different username, I would just click that caret and the rest of the users that I was logged in under under would pop up, making it really easy to pull from a number of different accounts if you need to. For this example, I'm just going to stick with Google Ads where I've already got it set up. Now we need to choose the accounts that we want to pull data from within Google Ads. I am logged into an MCC, so all of my different client accounts are going to be accessible through that one data source login through Google Ads. So there are a couple different ways that you can get to your accounts. You can come over here and click into this bar and it'll show you the names of all of the accounts that you have access to. I'm sorry they're blurred out, but you don't need to know who all those people are. You can then go through and scroll through all these different names and find the one that you want, or you can simply start typing in the name of some of the accounts and it'll filter for the one that you want. So I've just chosen an account that I know has data recently. Whenever I go through and pull an example query, you'll be able to see some data that's associated with it. The next thing we do is choose the date range that we want to pull data from. It's defaulted to today for me, but there are lots of different date ranges you can choose from this preset list. Today, yesterday, last week, this month to date, this month to yesterday, all this good stuff. You can also pull for last year and this year to date. And then there are these variable ranges down here that have X in them. So last X days, last X months, all that sort of thing. Basically what that means is you can choose one of these and it'll tell you that you can pull data from the last certain number of days in this example, or certain number of months. I've just set it to the last 7 days because that's a calendar week, and that's a date range that I use quite a bit. But you can also choose a custom date range if you want to, and then you just set up the start and end date of those different date ranges that you want. I'm going to default to using the last 7 days again, just so I know that I've got some data coming through. You can then compare data for different date ranges based on what you have set up. So there are some comparisons here, whether it's the previous period of the same length. I have it set up to the last 7 days, so that means that effectively the prior 7 days it will pull data for as well. Or you can have it set up as the same dates a year ago, custom date range, any of these different preset options. But for right now, I'm going to leave it as no comparison. Now, continuing down the list, the next thing we're going to do is choose the metrics that we want to pull in. Think of all the different metrics that you have available in the Google Ads platform. Almost all of them you can pull into this Google Sheet through Supermetrics. One easy thing to do is just click into the window, and just like the accounts, you can start to scroll through the different stats that are available. So whether it's impressions, clicks, cost, click-through rate, cost per click, budget, daily budget, all these different things are in here. Quality score, organic numbers, conversion numbers are in here. There are tons of things for video, the number of phone calls that you have coming through, Gmail, impression share, lots of different things. So I'm just going to choose a handful of metrics that I know that I will use in a certain way, because basically what I'm going to do is build a projection sheet for you guys and kind of show you what I normally do here. I'm going to go ahead and start pulling my data in the way that I would for that. So I have my example metrics here, and to this point I've done the most basic setup of a Supermetrics query that you can. Everything else from here is going to be ways to customize this query to make it exactly what we want. I'm actually going to go ahead and run this query and populate some data, and then the next few steps I'll show you how you can augment what that query looks like to get the data presented in the way you want to. So when you finally set up your query the way you want it to, you can just click Get Data to Table, and you'll notice that I'm still selected in A1. So when I hover over that, it says data will be inserted at cell A1. That's important to know and keep an eye on that, because if you do have your cursor over here in F4, it'll tell you that data will be inserted at cell F4. There's not necessarily a right or wrong place to put it, but I do encourage you to make sure that your data is set up clearly and cleanly so you can use it for different purposes later. I'll show you how I do that in another example here in just a bit, and why it's important to make sure that your data is going into good spots. But for right now, just know that when you hit Get Data to Table, that dictates where you're going to have your data populated. So let's go ahead and do that. So it ran the query, it's showing everything coming through, and now it shows clicks, impressions, cost, conversions, and it shows the amount of stats that I had for each of those in column B. So this is what the basic query would look like for this account for the past 7 days worth of data. And now you can see that the Supermetrics window has changed, and now there's this overlay on top of the usual toolbar. The reason this is happening is because my cursor is still over here in A1, but watch what happens when I click into any other another cell outside of that query, like D1. That overlay goes away because there is no Supermetrics query housed in that specific area. Basically, if I hit get data to table, it's going to do the same thing. Insert data into cell D1. Now, if I want to change the query that I'm using in A1, which is what I want to do for this example, I have to come over here and click somewhere into this query, and now it will hover back over the toolbar that I have here, and you can see that it is still set up to say that it will adjust the Google Ads query at sheet 1, which is the one that we're currently in cell A1 to B4. So you can click anywhere within this query, and it will recognize that you are trying to interact with the query that is already set up. So again, if you want to then set up a second query to pull different data, this is why I said it's important to know where your cursor is when you say get data to table, because you could accidentally overwrite the query that you just made if you don't click out of cell A1 and you don't click into someplace else. So keep that in mind. So now let's start to go through what's actually in this overlay box over here. The first thing you can do is refresh the query. This would be useful if you set a query up today and then tomorrow you came in and said that you wanted to see the data for the past 7 days. Now that we've moved forward a day, the last 7 days are different. So refreshing the query would pull in the last 7 days worth of data up till yesterday, basically, or up till tomorrow. It will be refreshed for the most recent past 7 days. The next thing we can do is modify the query and augment what we've done with the query the first time around. I'll do that here in a second, but I want to go through the rest of these menu options first. The next thing you can do is this show params section, and this will actually reveal something about the Supermetrics functionality in Google Sheets that I think is really important for everybody to know. So let's go ahead and click that. And it says up in the top that it's opening the Supermetrics queries sheet. Basically, that's what this does, and it has now highlighted this row. Every time you use Supermetrics in a Google Sheet, it is going to create a hidden sheet behind the scenes that contains all of the different information around the queries that you are setting up. So what's happening is that it's pulling in the data utilizing this specific row, but each time you create a new query, you're going to add additional rows to this sheet. So what this is useful for is that if you have a sheet that is full of lots of different queries, it'll make it a lot easier for you to find the specific query that you're looking for. Since we only have one in this sheet, it was really easy and it just defaulted me to this. But you can also see that every time I hover over the query here, it brings up this same editor bar that it does when we're on the sheet 1 in this Google Sheet, because it's basically saying that I can either click on any of the cells here and adjust this query, or I can go back to the original data sheet and be in any of the cells that are part of this sheet and adjust it here. Now that we've done that, you can see that this has changed to go to results, because it would basically kick me back into this A1 cell. The next thing you can do is duplicate the query. What that means is that it's going to load the query information that we have into the editor, into that editor bar that is currently being hidden here. So again, if you have multiple queries and you know that there's one that you want to use again or slightly adjust, you can click into the one that you want, click duplicate. It'll then load all of those settings into the editor. Then you can come over, click into a different cell, and get that data to table in a different way that you want. The other two are pretty easy here. You can delete the query, and you can delete the query and the data. So if you delete the query, that basically just says that it's not going to pull that anymore. It's going to forget all the different settings that you have, but it'll leave the data that you already have set up. But if you delete the query and data, obviously it'll delete this data that's over here as well. That's what all those options will do. So now let's just go back into modify and show the rest of the setup that we've got here. So the next few things we can do are to split the data into certain different sets. You can do things in a lot of different ways. So you can either split to rows or split to columns. I personally split lots of things to rows, and I find that really helpful for how I can get the data from my accounts and optimize it and use it in the ways that I want to for my projection sheet, which again, I'll show you here in just a little bit. But there are lots of different ways that you can segment data using these different split functionalities. So let's just click into one of them. The first thing you can do is start to split it by time. So let's say that we had this broken out by the past year. It'll then segment the data by each month if we want it to, whether it's the month name or just a certain numeric value. It can separate it by day of the week, by day of the month, by different weeks, by the hour, the date. There are lots of different ways that you can segment data by time, but you can also start to segment by the different values within a specific account. So let's say that we pulled in multiple different accounts, like I showed earlier. You can segment the data by the account name that's associated with it. You can segment by which network the data showed up on. You can segment by different things within the campaign, whether it's campaign name, status, bid strategy. You can also start to segment by budget, ad group, the specific ad that is coming through. If the headline, you want it to only include certain headlines, you can do that. There's lots of different segmentations that you can have your data pulled in by. So keep in mind that you can segment your data differently, but one of the examples I want to show you is just a segment by campaign name, because I do this quite frequently and I find it really helpful. The next things that'll pop up when you tell it to start to split rows by certain things is it'll ask how many rows you want to fetch. That basically means that if you want to set a limit to only fetch the top 5, you can do that. Or you can set it up to fetch 1,000,000, which is what I have it set up as, because usually I want it to pull in all of the data for these different pieces. You can then tell it to sort the rows either by the campaign name, which is the dimension that we are filtering things on, or any of the metrics that you have pulling in from the query. If you wanted to sort, you just sort by impression, and then it'll ask you which sort direction you want to go, ascending or descending. And then you can also have a secondary sort so that if something has the same number of impressions, you can say, okay, if it has the same number of impressions, now let's sort by clicks, and we'll do ascending clicks. I actually don't really care how these sort, so I'm just going to set these up as automatic. And let's just look and see what it looks like when we have it split by campaign name. You can see that this chart up here has changed. It no longer says get data to table. It says apply changes or exit. We're going to go ahead and apply the changes because we're modifying the query that we're trying to run here. Now you can see that the data looks quite a bit different because we've now set an additional dimension, and now the data has to be shown differently. So instead of being shown with the metric names in column A and the values in column B, now we have something that looks a lot more like a table. Campaign name is in column A, and then the headers for the different stats are in B to E, and the actual numbers are going down in the different rows according to the campaign name that they're associated with. So this is what it looks like when you start to segment data. You can add in multiple different dimensions. So let's say I also wanted to add in device to this, and I just click apply changes. And now you can see we have a ton more rows coming in here because now we have not only the campaign name, but they're segmented by device, and then we have all of our metrics over to the right. This took something that when we first started, you'll remember we had 4 rows and 2 columns. Now we have 6 columns worth of data and 38 rows available worth of data, just because we started to segment and we pulled things out differently. So that's how you would split data by different segments. And again, in the same way that we're doing this by rows, you can also do it by column as well. So the next thing we can do is filter our data for different pieces that are in here. So when you open this up, there'll be lots of different filters that have available in the same way that as soon as you click into a box, there's lots of choices. That's the same thing here. So you can filter by different things of time, the account, network, campaigns, a lot of those same things that we had as dimensions can also be filters that are set up. But let's just say I want to filter by some of the metrics that we have. So I'm going to filter by conversions. Now using the operator, I can decide how I want to filter data based on conversions. So let's just say I want to filter on anything that has greater than 0 conversions, meaning anything that has a conversion. You can then set up an additional filter to say maybe the campaign name does not contain brand. So now I just click apply changes because we're still modifying the same query. And every time I modify those queries, you can tell that the data changes as to what it's doing. It erases what's in there and then pulls in only the data that it needs to do. That's the benefit of modifying a query versus pulling in an additional query, creating a second query, is that this will erase the data that I no longer need and put in only the data that I have. So we went from having 38 lines of data to now we have 3 available because there's only 3 campaigns that have conversions that are not the brand campaign in the past 7 days. So this is how you can start to filter the data to get a little bit more specific for what you want. The last thing you can do is start to utilize some of these additional options. I'm not going to go too far into these, but they can be really helpful. So if you don't want to include anything that has 0 impressions, that's a really easy one to just check the box and it'll adjust that way. And there are a number of other things that you can do in here. So I encourage you to take a look and see what makes the most sense for you. Now that I'm done modifying this query, one of the things that I want you to always keep in mind is that you need to then exit modifying your query. And now it'll again pop back up and show you this overlay here. Because if you don't do that and you start using Supermetrics again and start using that editor again, you might be intending to put more data in cell H1, but because you never exited modifying the other query, you actually just continued to adjust the query that was there. And then as soon as you hit apply, it's only going to adjust the data that you have in this original query, not pull in the new query that you wanted. So keep that in mind. So the last thing I want to do before I hop into a specific example of how I use this is to talk about how you can schedule these to refresh. So you'll remember earlier I said that there's the manual way to refresh by just coming in here. The tool will come off to the side and say that you refresh the data. You could also do that from the Supermetrics query tab by just being associated with the right cell. You could tell it to refresh. Or in this original menu that we went to up top, there's add-ons, Supermetrics. You can tell it to refresh all or refresh active sheet, and it will refresh all of the queries within those specific pieces. But there is another way that you can do that by utilizing the original editor that's over here. So you can click schedule from here, and it'll open up this editor that gives you quite a bit of control on this, just like most of the rest of the pieces here do. So the first thing you want to do is choose action, and that can refresh at pretty much any rate that you want, unless you want to pay for enterprise that refreshes hourly. Personally, I need these to refresh daily because I use them a lot for projection sheets, which I'll show you here in just a second. But if you just want something to refresh every week or every month, you can do that. There's also the option to refresh an email on a certain basis. And basically what this does is that it will refresh the queries and it will email you to tell you that the queries have been refreshed, and it will send you the link to the Google Sheet that your data is in. So if there's a report that your client wants on a weekly basis, scheduling things to refresh and email weekly can be really helpful. You then get to choose the day of the week that you want it to run, and you can then choose what time you want it to start running. So whether you want it to start running at 1 a.m., 7 a.m., whatever it is, choose a time where you want it to start running. And then you can customize the email that you send to your client. So right now it defaults to the sender as Supermetrics, but if I wanted to say it was coming from Paid Media Pros, I can do that as well. You can then customize the email that it's coming from, the reply to email, the subject of the email, as well as the file name. You can also add in a CC and a BCC if you want to do that. And then there's lots of different options for the number of sheets that you want to show up in the report, what type of format you want it to be in, all this good stuff. So there's lots of things we can do here. When you're done and you have it set up exactly how you want it to, you just click Store Trigger, and it will store and refresh this on the rate that you told it to do it. So the next thing I want to show is how I use this in a projection sheet, just to give a pretty quick rundown here. This is what the projection sheet looks like. You'll remember that we've done a video about these in the past, but I use Supermetrics to make these very easy for myself. So when you come in here, you'll actually see that the values that are here, they're formulas, and it's sum of P7D or past 7 days and all of column I. And that's just the spend for Bing. So if I go into the past 7 days tab that I have down here, I look at column I, that is the cost for Bing. And I'm basically doing the sum of this entire column because I set this Bing query to pull in for only the past 7 days. And then I have it populated in this Google Sheet, in this cell, to sum all of the spend for that date range. The nice thing is each of these is identical because I have them set up so that I have different tabs for past 7 days, month to date, and last month, so that I really only have to write this formula once. But then if you go over to month to date column, the only thing that changed up here is the name of the sheet, and then last month is the same, but the column is the same. It's always column I for Bing spend. So I know that, and it's easy to write the formulas to make this come in on a daily basis. This also means that I only have to set up 3 queries for all of my Bing data, and it comes in really easy and it populates into the cells where I need it to then utilize the date range, do the projections like we've shown in the past, and show the projected spend for all of the different platforms that we need in one sheet. And all I had to do was set this up once, set it to refresh, and now it does it every day. And when I get to work, I already know this client's projected spend and performance because Supermetrics updated the data while I was asleep, and my formulas make it really easy that it's all showing right away as soon as I get to my desk. Now that's just one of the ways you can use Supermetrics in Google Sheets. The other things are something that you might have seen in this main menu when I popped in here earlier, and those are templates. So let's hop into that. You can see that there are a lot of different templates to choose from, and it kind of starts us off in this PPC section, which is pretty great. There's LinkedIn spend, paid channel mix, detailed paid channel mix, whatever the difference is there. There are lots of different options that you can choose from to show all of these different metrics that are already built for you. So my projection sheet is just what I manually pulled and built by using very simple formatting. These are a great way to show much more sophisticated views of the data that's coming in without having to do a lot of work. All you really need to do is choose one of these templates and then tell Supermetrics which account you want to link it to, and it'll populate the data for you. There are lots of them for analytics as well. There are also some SEO dashboards in here if that's what you're into. But let's take a look at just one of these looks like. So I'm just going to go into, let's do the quality score report. So I'm just going to hit add template. And then Supermetrics is going to have me choose which account I want to use and then insert the template. Now it's done, and I already have a dashboard for quality score built just with this account. There are charts, there are different tables that show you different numbers here, where your impressions are going, all the different metrics that you could want to see based on your account that's here. So right now there's no data for this table, but there are a lot of different ways that you can customize it by choosing different metrics that you want to see here. You can choose the different date range that you want to pull things for, lots of different ways that you can adjust this, but this was a very simple way to get a quality score template in here without having to do basically any work. I just clicked a few buttons and it popped up. Super easy to do. So take advantage of those template galleries if that's something that would be really helpful for you, save you a lot of time. So that gives you a pretty good overview of how we can utilize Supermetrics for Google Sheets. But remember, there are lots of different platforms that Supermetrics can pull data into. Again, the good news is that almost everything I just showed you in Google Sheets is identical for Excel. You can pull all the data in, the builder looks very similar, the queries are set up very similar, and there are lots of templates that you can use for Excel in the exact same way that I just showed you how to do for Google Sheets. Google Data Studio is another really great way to pull in data, and it actually makes it so you have to do even less work once you get things set up, because it ends up being one of those beautiful Data Studio reports that people like to build instead. They've got a lot of easy preset templates coming from a number of different setups. So let's just click on advertising, filter for that, just the same way that we saw in the Google Sheets. There's lots of different templates that we can choose from, whether it's just Facebook ads, Google ads, having a different data comparison between the two. There is one full template that includes a lot of different platforms in here, and it's really easy to set up. You just choose the report that you want to use. Supermetrics will then show you a preview of what it looks like with some sample data, and then all you have to do is choose Use Template, and it'll let you set it up for your account, and it'll leverage those logins that you already have set up through Supermetrics. The last thing I'm going to touch on really briefly, and I'm actually just on the Supermetrics website to make this a lot clearer, is called Supermetrics Uploader. And this is the last kind of tool I want to talk about for PPC specific uses. Basically what this does is it allows you to take your cost data from different advertising platforms and import them into Google Analytics. One of the great things about utilizing Google Analytics in tandem with Google Ads is that you can see not only the performance on site for analytics like you could for any other source, but it actually pulls in all of the Google ad spend as well, because those platforms converse really well because they're both run by Google. But with the Supermetrics, you can use this uploader tool and you can schedule daily uploads from all of the major platforms that you would have ads running on as well and import spend. So now you not only have your Google ad spend in Google Analytics, you can also have your Facebook ads, LinkedIn, Microsoft, Taboola, all of these different platforms. You can have that spend in your Google Analytics reports, and now just with a really quick import, just using this uploader tool, your Google Analytics just got a lot more powerful because it has all of the other spend metrics available as well, and you don't have to rely quite as much on external tools for reporting on that. So the last thing I want to talk about is pricing, because we just talked about how valuable this tool can be, but I do want you to know that this is a paid tool and you do have to pay for these different pieces. We've talked about these 4 different tools. So Google Sheets, Data Studio, Excel, and Uploader. They start at $39 a month for Uploader and Data Studio, and $99 a month for Google Sheets and Excel. So think about all the time you spend pulling data into different management platforms, whether it's Sheets, Excel, Data Studio, all this kind of stuff. How often do you have to go in and pull those manually, where Supermetrics could do them for you and refresh on a daily basis, refresh instantly, refresh and send reports out to people if you need them to? How much time could you save by using these different pieces? And on top of that, you don't actually have to know right off the bat how much time you could save. If you go into some of the pricing for each of these, you can start a free trial for 14 days and see how much it helps you out. So I would encourage you to take a peek. If you're not quite sure what you want to do, take a free run on it. Take a 14-day free trial, see how much time it saves you over a couple of weeks, and then decide, is it worth that $99 a month? Is it worth that $39 a month, to make sure that you're getting all of your data in all the platforms you want in an instant. So if all that sounds good and you're interested in giving Supermetrics a test run, we'd love if you'd use our link and let Supermetrics know that we sent you. The link is either here on the screen or down in the show notes, and head on over and get started with your 14-day free trial. As you can tell, there's a lot that you can do with Supermetrics. We're confident as users of the product that it'll help save you time and help you make better decisions by having all of your data in one place, in one platform, so you can make better informed marketing decisions. If you're ready to get started, check out the show notes below. We've got a link down there to help you get started with your own free trial on Supermetrics. Thanks for watching our video. If you thought it was useful, give us a thumbs up below.
We release a new video at least once a week, so if you want to get notified of when a new one comes out, be sure to subscribe to the Paid Media Pros channel.